Hello everyone, welcome Friedemann, Findeisen here from Holistic Songwriting. How are you guys doing? Welcome to this little session here where I talk about the music of the Artist series, the second season. Now, as I said in the previous video where I discussed the intro music, I will be talking about the main music that is going to be running under the entire video pretty much. And some of the things that went for the intro music also go for this. So this new season here is about rock, which means obviously I want the music to adapt to that a little bit. So this has a little bit more guitars in it. And these pink ones here, or purple, whatever you want to call it, that's guitars. Over here we have the drums, and up here that's all synths. So as you can see, no MIDI in this track whatsoever. This is all properly recorded instruments. I wanted to give this all a little bit dirty sound because I didn't want it to sound too clean. I always want my tracks to feel a little bit like they have life. This one here is really background music, so it's not supposed to take too much attention. It's really just there to kind of fill in the gaps and to add a little bit of emotion to whatever you're watching. So as you can see right up here, I had the original track from the Radiohead episode, just so I had an actual vocal track that I could work with. So I do this often when I write music to film, that I drag in the audio just to see how it's working with the audio that's already there. I see this kind of like my vocal track, because it has a very similar function. The vocal track is what's important. That's what people are paying attention to. And the music is really just there to provide the emotion, as you know, the chords and the sounds. That's really what the music is for. So while I was writing the song, this was on pretty much at all times. I'm going to turn it off for now, just so you can hear the music. I'm going to play a little bit for you guys. I'm going to jump section through section a little bit to show you what the actual song sounds like, because I know it's a little bit hard to hear in the final thing. But here it is. So it starts off like this. So then we have this filtered kick down here. A little bit of guitars coming in. A little bit detuned to make it sound a little bit rougher. Some snares coming in. Some more guitars. Now these guitars here drop out a little bit. As you can see, this was a little bit louder, now it's a little bit softer. We got a little bit of crash here. Then we get this other guitar here. Just to provide some movement. And then the drums come in. So these are the drums. Now, for my taste, this is maybe a little bit too roomy. So if this was a proper song, I probably would have applied a little bit less reverb to it. But since this is supposed to be in the background, I'd put a little bit more on it just to push it a little bit further back so that the main vocal, the voiceovers, could sit in the front a little bit more. Then we get this really cool sound here, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. This was a ton of fun to make. Then we get this arpeggio back. We go into this reverse cymbal here. And then back to this guitar over here with that drum arrangement. So now it's getting smaller again, which is important so that the whole thing can loop, and so you don't notice it when the loop starts again. All right, but that's the entire track. Let's talk about the different sections in isolation here. Let's start maybe with this arpeggio here, because I think that was one of the first things I actually wrote, so to say. I'm going to say this in quotation marks because this is actually a sample, and it sounds like this. And now you can hear the click. See, did you hear that? That annoys me every time. I basically cut this up. This is why you have that little click, and pasted it together again. So the order in the original clip was a little bit different than it is here. So I did something with it. It's not like the original sample, but I just wanted to change the chord progression a little bit. But so that's the original thing. That's what I started with. But then I added this Juno here, which adds a little bit of bass notes. That's a great bass. I love that. Sounds a little bit off-center. Alright, together with this. And then we added this here, which is basically me playing on the Juno 106 with a filter that's fairly closed, slowly opening up the filter, and then pulling it back down with some reverb on it, as you can see. And that just over and over again. See here, I'm opening up the filter a little bit more. This just provides a little bit of movement. It's sort of like an automation that I've physically did on the instrument. So this is not an automation that you can see here in the automation logic. This is all done on the actual instrument, physically moving up and down a fader. Then we have the Moog Voyager, which provides this sound here. And I don't know why, but I really like this. Not in isolation, but together with everything else, I think it works really well. So this is without it. Feels a little empty, but with it, I feel like that works a lot better. Then we have this guitar part here. Which sounds easy to play. Well, it's not. It's pretty much impossible to play on guitar. So here's what I did. I just pretty much split it into different sections. So that's one of them. And then, right? That's kind of how I did it. This is pretty much impossible to play on guitar because the strings can't ring if you're if you want to play something on the same string, obviously. So I had to kind of split it out like that because I really wanted that legato effect of having like two notes and the second one rings out over the rest of it. And so this is pretty much the only way to ever play this. This would not be possible to play on an actual guitar. I mean, there's ways to play it similar to that, but then it wouldn't be as legato as this. And this is something I do quite a lot, actually, especially with rock guitars. You know, what you have a lot if you're recording, like, say, power chords, right? And you want that consistent, fat, thick power chord sound. Obviously, between chords, you will have a couple of milliseconds where you're switching chords. And if you want that thick power chord sound to continue and you don't want those breaks, what I'll do is often something like this, where I have one track that just records chords number 1 and 3, and the second track records chords 2 and 4. And so this way I can overlap them and really make everything legato. So that's one of the cool things about music production, is that you really have the opportunity to do this. Live, this wouldn't obviously be possible, but you know, music production makes it possible. So one of the many reasons why I'm such a big fan. Then we have this guitar arp here with a Pan Man on it. This is a Sound Toys plugin. And that's just me playing on the guitar. Top of this track. Then we got these harmonics here, which is reversed. Oh, they're not. This is not the one. Second one is the reversed. Right, so these are just harmonics. These harmonics don't naturally appear on the guitar in this key. So what I actually had to do was produce some artificial harmonics, meaning I press or I hold the note in the left hand that I want to make into an harmonic, and then 12 frets up from that, I produce an artificial harmonic with my right hand. To guitarists, this will make more sense than if you're not a guitarist, but I just thought I'd mention it here. Then we have this reverse here, which I think is... Oh yeah, so that's just a lot of feedback on a chord. And that just leads up to this. Probably should put some reverb on this. But then we have the drums, which I know you're all excited about, but let's talk about this stuff down here first, because that actually happens first in the song. We have this filtered kick, which is just the actual sample. I didn't do anything with that. Here we have the snare, which is filtered by a channel EQ. Sounds and looks really weird by its own, but together with the kick, then we have this uplifter here, just a reverse crash, which is fed into this other crash here. Right, so this has some reverb on it just to make it sound a little bit more washed out, a little bit more backgrounded. Otherwise, it can be really sharp and in your face, and that's not what I want for this type of background music here. This already sounded really far away, so I left it. And let's go into the actual drums here. I think this was the first thing I added to this track, which is this a little bit laid back drum track. See, I actually pulled it back a little bit, so this would have been right on the track. So it's a little bit laid back here, and the timing is a little wonky, which I love. And then later on, I put this kick to it. So I just literally found those moments where the kick hits and just added another kick drum to that just to make it sound a little bit bigger. Here we have an open hi-hat, and it starts off like this. And then there's a snare, which is also synced to this loop up here. And this is something I do quite a lot, actually. I pull in a loop. Sometimes I mess with it as well. In this case, I just put some filtering on it. Let's see what that sounded like initially, actually. Oh, I remember. So the fun thing about this is that it's actually meant for a track that is 100 BPM, and this track is 126 BPM. So I just stretched it, or compressed it, rather. Meaning that it just sounds a little bit weird. This doesn't sound very natural. And that's also why the timing is so wonky, because all those tiny little timing inconsistencies that you get in one tempo obviously get exaggerated when you stretch it. And this is why it's stretched. I just said it was compressed. No, obviously it's stretched because I pulled this to twice the length. I think the actual sample, we can try this. Let's try this out. Let's hear what this actually sounded like before I messed with it. It was probably something like this. Right? And there you can really hear, yeah, this is a cajon with some other percussion, a cajita or something. So stretched out like this, already you get a really weird but interesting kind of percussion sound. So that's how I messed with it. Then I added some filtering. Again, I didn't want it to be too much in the forefront. Listen to this if I didn't put that filter on it. Again, if this was a track on its own, I might have done that, but I wanted it to be in the background, so I put this filter on it. Which is kind of a shame, because I like those high details in it. But, yeah, you know, you have to make some compromises sometimes. So that's that. Then I added that kick, and I added the first snare. And a second snare, which adds a little bit more highs together. Again, a little bit more reverb than I would like, but again, it's background music. Then we have these hi-hats here, and then the normal hi-hat, the closed hi-hats. As you can hear, very, very soft. Now, all that's left to do is talk about this this sound up here, which was so much fun to make. This is a really, really fun kind of sound to make, because I'm actually physically turning the knob to create all that. And the knob I am turning is an LFO that modulates the volume of the synth. So the synth itself is basically, I'm just pressing one note on the synth, and there's some pitch modulation on that anyways, which is why sometimes it's a little bit higher, the pitch, and sometimes it's a little bit lower, and it sounds a little bit detuned. And then with the LFO, I can control how quickly that gate closes and opens up. And so that's how I created that sound, which has like that FM radio frequency disturbance kind of flair to it. And I think it fills up the spectrum really nicely. And it also adds a little bit of unpredictability. Without it, it just sounds a little, I think it sounds a little bland, maybe a little too clean. And this here just, I don't know, gives it something dirty, you know what I mean? And I like that in tracks, when you have a little bit of dirt in there. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, please let me know what it was, and let me know if you want to see something like this again next month. Take care and stay gefährlich.